Lifestyle inflation rarely begins with a big decision. It usually starts quietly, almost invisibly, at the exact moment income increases just enough to create a feeling of relief. Imagine someone receiving their first meaningful raise after years of careful budgeting, and instead of feeling permanently safer, they begin adjusting small parts of daily life in ways that feel reasonable and temporary, yet gradually reshape their financial structure. A slightly better apartment, more convenient transportation, upgraded subscriptions, more frequent meals outside the home, and small comfort purchases that signal progress all begin to redefine what feels normal. And once those changes become routine, the old version of life starts to feel distant and even uncomfortable to return to. This process is known as lifestyle inflation, but it is less about spending habits and more about psychological adaptation. Human perception of stability adjusts quickly to improvements, which means that what once felt like success soon becomes the baseline expectation for everyday living. Instead of income increases expanding long-term financial flexibility, they often expand short-term consumption boundaries, creating the illusion that financial movement is happening while underlying resilience remains unchanged. The reason this shift happens so consistently has less to do with discipline and more to do with how the brain interprets signals of progress. When income rises, the mind interprets the change as permission rather than opportunity, and permission quietly transforms into identity. People begin to see themselves as someone who lives in a certain area, uses certain services, or maintains a certain routine. And once identity becomes attached to those upgrades, reducing them later feels like moving backward rather than adjusting strategy. Over time, this psychological framing turns flexible expenses into fixed expectations. The mathematics behind lifestyle inflation reveals why the effect becomes difficult to reverse. If income increases by 20%, but spending increases by 15%, the remaining difference may appear responsible on the surface, yet the long-term impact depends on what portion of income remains adjustable. Fixed expenses such as housing, transportation commitments, and recurring services tend to rise permanently, while savings flexibility often stays temporary unless deliberately protected. This means each improvement in lifestyle can quietly reduce the portion of income that remains available for future decisions, even though total earnings are increasing. Across economic history, this pattern appears repeatedly during periods of expanding opportunity. When wages rise or credit becomes easier to access, households often respond not by increasing reserves, but by increasing expectations about what everyday life should include. These expectations reshape entire consumer environments, encouraging businesses to design products and services that assume higher baseline spending, which then reinforces the cycle. Over time, lifestyle inflation stops looking like individual behavior and starts functioning as part of the structure of modern economies. Understanding this pattern changes the way income growth can be interpreted. Instead of viewing higher earnings as a signal to immediately upgrade comfort, it becomes possible to see them as a rare moment when flexibility temporarily increases before expectations adjust. That window is often brief, but it represents one of the few times when financial direction can shift without requiring sacrifice later. Protecting even a small portion of each increase from automatic lifestyle expansion gradually creates a buffer between identity and consumption, and that separation quietly restores choice. Lifestyle inflation is not a mistake people make because they misunderstand money. It is a predictable response to improvement in conditions, shaped by psychology, reinforced by systems, and normalized by culture. Recognizing it does not require rejecting progress or avoiding comfort, but it does make it possible to see that income growth alone does not change financial trajectory unless expectations grow more slowly than opportunity. When that difference remains visible, increases in earnings begin to function less like permission to spend and more like leverage to decide what kind of stability the future should contain.